Hello and welcome, Success Grid Nation, to this episode of the Success Grid podcast with your host, Hussein Talib. In this episode, I have with me Matthew Fornaro to talk about the business do's and don'ts from a legal perspective, what you need to know about the law to make your business okay and all right. Matthew is a Floridian whose law practice focuses on helping small to medium sized businesses with their legal needs throughout the life of their business. So, Matthew, I'm glad you are joining me for this episode. Welcome.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome to have you here. So, first of all, I want to ask you, first of all, because this is the Success Secret podcast, you are practicing law to help businesses and their in the legal perspective. But I want to know from your experience, you working with other people for years now. So, what does success means to you, and what do you see other people see or have certain misconceptions around success?
Well, success obviously means different things to different people. I mean, for me personally in my business, success means that I'm doing well financially, but I'm also happy with where I am in my business as far as the amount of work I have to do, the amount of free time I have to spend doing what I want to do, where my cases are at, and where my clients are at. My clients generally, for the most part, obviously want to be happy, so that's part of their success measure. And then another part of their success measure is obviously the financial aspect, that they want to be making a profit and being financially stable. So I would say the easiest indicator of objectivity as far as what's successful in business would be the bottom line financially.
Hmm, definitely. So now, throughout your business and career, business do's and don'ts from a legal perspective. Now, as a business owner or as an entrepreneur, what is the, let's say, the basic thing, the fundamental thing an owner or an entrepreneur should be thinking about before they are start building? Is there something that we should start thinking about before we start building the business from your perspective?
Yes, before you start your business, whatever it is, you have to lay out a plan. So you want to have a business plan, hopefully written down, that spells out what it is you want to do and how you're going to do it, and then follow that plan in order to make it happen. And then that all with all that comes all of the complying with legalities and all that stuff. So my primary advice is, before you start your business, before you do anything, have a written business plan that you can follow in order to do it.
Mm, awesome. So, in this plan you are talking about, let's put aside the plans for the business running operations and these kind of things that actually the business started to make the money. If we are looking from a legal point of view, what are the things that are important for the business to focus on? Like if we talk about, for example, copyright, using other things, other people things, something about in regards to the name of the business. What are the things that you, if someone came to and ask you, what are the things that they should be focused on, especially
Sure. So
especially at the beginning?
Sure. So the first thing is, you got to figure out what kind of business organization you want to have. So, for instance, you can have a sole proprietorship, which is essentially just you acting as a business, or you can have a corporation, or you can have an LLC, or you can have a partnership. So, the first thing is, you've got to pick out your business organization. Once you pick that out, you have to have the draft up the documents that go with the business organization. So, if it's a company or a corporation, you have to have articles of incorporation and bylaws. If it's an LLC, you have to have a membership agreement and an operating agreement. And if it's a partnership agreement, you have to have a partnership agreement. Then you need to register with where you want your corporation to be. So, for instance, I'm in Florida. So, if you wanted to start a business down here in Florida, you would have to register with the Florida Secretary of State your business, whatever kind of business it is. So, obviously, that's the big first step. making sure that you pick the business organization, and then making sure that you have all the formation documents that go with it and that you register it correctly with the locality that you're in.
Okay, so in that regard, do you think, or do you have some people coming into you and asking you, I'm thinking about certain idea for a business. Should I like start now an LLC or sole proprietor or like now, or should I, let's say, start doing what I want to do to start seeing money coming in and see if this idea is working? Do you think this is a possibility, or do you think that whatever the case may be, we should always register a business?
You can, but I would not recommend doing that. I would always recommend, if you're going to start a business, you need to run it professionally and you need to make sure it's not intermingled with you personally. So I would want you to set up the business, register it, and then even if it's just a nominal business or, part-time or whatever, or you're just exploring or doing whatever, you have the business organization in place to then run the business. You shouldn't do it yourself because you're going to run into potential issues down the road as far as liability, both financial and legally.
Hmm. So okay, so this will affect, as you mentioned here, afterwards. So what are the issues, that things that do's and don'ts of the things that will benefit us from having the company registered from the get-go?
Well, when you have the company registered from the get-go, you're able to do things like, you can, if you need a place, you can commercially lease space because you have a business organization in place. You can open up a bank account because you have a business organization in place. You can take out a loan if you need a business loan, like for instance with the Small Business Administration thing, because you have a business in place. So you existing legally as a business means that you have certain rights that you won't have if that business doesn't exist, as far as money, and potential to do things based on you having a business organization.
Hmm. Definitely. So it will give the owner more options, or will make it easier for them to start getting bank accounts and maybe let's say loans or credits for their business to grow in a certain way for the future. That's very important if you want your business to grow. So you'll get some kind of uh, financial help, I guess, from the banks in the future. If your financials are good, you could be financed by by other banks, which is good to grow the business. So now, in that regard, after, for example, someone registers their businesses and everything they have is, let's say, okay and fine. But throughout your business and career, have you seen like some kind of breaches, or some kind of legal troubles, or some kind of considerations that entrepreneurs usually might miss throughout their businesses, operations, and working within their business?
Yes. So obviously, nobody wants to go into business to have problems or to get into trouble, but it happens no matter how pragmatic you are, like doing everything we said so far to set up your business. So one of the main things is you want to make sure that everything you do in your business possible, you have a contract, a written contract for. So you want to make sure that if you're a franchise, you have a written franchise agreement. If you're a renter, you have a written lease. If you're purchasing things, you want to make sure you have a sales contract. And if you're borrowing money, you want to make sure you have loan documents. If you're selling stuff, you want to make sure you have a sales contract on that end, whether it's online or in person or at your store. So you want to make sure that everything's written and the contract states exactly what both sides are supposed to do and says what happens if you don't do it and how you fix it. So a lot of businesses try to just do things on a handshake or an email or something, and that's how you get into problems like breaches of contract, money owed to people or money owed to businesses, or things not performed. So my primary advice is make sure when you start doing your business, everything you possibly can, have a written contract that's as robust as possible, that has as much information in it in order for you to have a smooth operation.
Okay. So from business's perspective, there might be lots of problem in regards to copyright, for example, from other places or businesses, IPs. So these are the things that are copyright of other businesses or websites or whatever, and also, for example, IPs that the business have. So uh, other things from after starting the business, is there something that should be, let's say, maybe written down or registered, for example, the trademark, the IPs, these kind of things? Would you also recommend people to go that way to protect, let's say, the whole business? They will not only have a business registered in the place or the state, they would also have their IPs, trademarks, name will not be able to be used by other people. So I guess this is something or a step that is very important for the business, so that they won't have trouble in that regard. Because if you are doing that, it will be an issue in the long run.
Yes. So as a business, you want to make sure that you protect your own intellectual property. And if you're using someone else's intellectual property, you want to make sure that you're legally doing it and that the holder knows what you're doing. So if you're a business and you create uh ideas or logos or websites or whatever, you want to make sure that you go and you register. If it's a copyright, you register the copyright, which is federal copyright. You register with the Copyright Office. If it's a trademark, like the name of your business or a logo or a design or something you have, you want to make sure you register the trademark with the Patent and Trademark Office, which is another federal office. And if you have a patent, like you made up an invention or something, you want to make sure it's patented also at the US Patent and Trademark Office. If you have something like, for instance, if you're Coca-Cola and you have a secret formula, you want to make sure that you keep that formula secret. So you'd want to have a trade secret, which is another form of IP. So you may want that. And then using other people's IP, you want to make sure that you have their permission. And like I said before, you want contracts. So you want their express written permission that you're allowed to use their copyrights or their trademarks in your business so that there's no issues.
Hmm. So that's very important to have always contracts in place, because if we are working, it's great if we are working on trust and handshake, but always in business nowadays you need to have contracts, because they are reference back to what's been dealt with each other. Because this is important, because you will never know what happens and either party. So having contracts is very important for business owners. So throughout your business and career, have you seen some kind of a story that was strange to you and you were shocked to learn about?
Yes, Hussein, I've seen lots of stuff that's mind-boggling and shocking that I've seen so much of it now that it's not that extraordinary. But yeah, I've seen people have $1 million deals written, literally written on a cocktail napkin. And I've seen them people try to enforce those deals on the napkin and bring the napkin to court. So I've seen crazy things. I mean, at least it was an attempt to get a written contract. That case was very interesting, very unique. I've seen people try to get out of paying debts by changing their identity and doing all kinds of other things. I've seen people have sham businesses, people make up businesses. I've seen people fake who they are. So I've seen a lot of different things that are definitely unique and jarring, even just in the business context, not even in anything else. So yes.
Hmm, definitely. So this is one of the important things actually, to have contracts and business contracts to keep everyone's interest in place. So from your experience, have you seen uh, there are certain things that after a while, we talked about at the beginning, let's say it's a business should be registered. After that, we should take care, for example, about IPs, trademarks, copyright, and these type of things. Is there something else that is important usually, especially if you know from the financial side of things, usually sometimes entrepreneurs or business owners miss?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you keep things as formal as possible. So you don't want to intermix your personal life with your business as far as finances go and as far as related things go. So you want to make sure your business has its own bank account that only does business stuff that you don't go to. And, if you want to go out to dinner, you take money out and you don't do that. You make sure that the bank account is solely for business expenses and make sure that your personal bank account is solely for personal expenses and not business expenses. And then the other thing you also want to do is you want to make sure you comply with business formalities. So you make sure you always file your tax returns. Make sure you always have your governing documents in order as far as your uh, documents for your business organization, and make sure that you follow them. Like if you need an annual meeting, you have your annual meeting. If you need votes on certain things, you have votes on certain things, and just keep it as formal and realistic as possible. Because when people get lazy or when people don't do formalities and they mix bank accounts and they don't do things, then that's when they run into personal trouble regarding their business.
Hmm. So that's very important. It's one of the most important things as a business to have a separate bank account other than your personal bank account, because we don't want things to uh, come up within each other in the accounts and the use of personal things from the business, or vice versa. That is preferable, I think. Yes, I think in general. So from now, do you think that there is something else or important that you would like to mention that we did not mention?
Sure. As a business, you got to make sure that, you're obviously, it's got to be above board, professionally run. It's not your hobby, it's, your business. So you got to, as part of that business, you want to work with professionals who will help you further your business. So, for instance, I'm a business law attorney. I help businesses with a legal perspective. Businesses also need to work with accountants. So don't do your own taxes if you have the ability not to. Always have an accountant on board. You have to make sure you have your banker. So in case you have any incidents or you need money or whatever, make sure you have a banker and just make sure you work with respected professionals in your business because you're not in it alone. You have a whole team of people who you can rely on to help you with your business.
Hmm. So, do you think there are some tools, resources, or books that you can recommend for entrepreneurs or business owners to help them along the way?
Sure. I mean, depending on where you are, each state has different laws as far as different corporations or different regulations in states, but the US itself has its own regulations as far as the federal government itself. So I would say if you need assistance or you need help with your business or whatever, I mean, the federal government and your state governments have a bunch of great information that's not going to steer you wrong, mostly from like the Small Business Administration, or you can go to the US Chamber of Commerce, or you can go to one of your local chambers of commerce and they have a bunch of pretty good information that's not going to try to sell you anything or mislead you. That just gives you good, honest information about your business, whether you're starting your business, whether you're in business, or whether you're trying to wind down your business.
Hmm. Definitely, it's good to use these resources in that regard. So, you mentioned there are, for example, if you are mentioning the states, do you think some people, because I would know like in the states, it could be different tax or state fees. So, do you think that each one, especially the people in the states, it is better to always open a business within the state that they are in, or is it okay to look for different states to open the business because the fees are lower?
Well, most businesses that we talk about aren't really big enough to justify opening or trying to go to a different state. But there's some nuances in that. For instance, I'm in Florida. There's no corporate tax in Florida. So this is a great place to do business because there's no corporate tax. If you're in New York, there's corporate tax, there's city tax. If you're in New York City, there's lots of taxes. So, but if you're a New York business and you're in New York, you're going to have certain rights and privileges if you register as a New York business that you're not going to have if you register in a foreign, well, foreign means outside the state in this case, so a foreign business. So, for instance, if you're in New York and you register in like Delaware, where a lot of people do business, or Nevada, where a lot of people do business, if something happens to you in New York, you're not considered a New York resident because you register in another state. So you're going to have a lot more problems than if you were to just register in that state. But that's also part of why I just said before you want a team of people to work with. You'd want to discuss with your accountant what the best financial situation is for you to do as far as incorporating in a different state than the state you're actually doing business in. So it's part of the process. I mean, there's, six of one, half a dozen of another. You can make arguments either way, but I would say, if possible, work with your attorney and work with your accountant to come up with what's best for you, because there's certain tax savings in one place, but if you do the tax savings in one place, you're going to lose the residency in another. So it's a trade-off that you got to find out what works for you as far as which one you want to do.
Okay, awesome. So in that also regards, do you work with international clients?
Yes, I work with international clients. I work with a lot of people in the Caribbean, a lot of people in
Mm,
Canada, for instance.
okay.
And then obviously a lot of people out of state, because like I just said,
Mm,
the definition of foreign for business purposes is not in the same state. It doesn't mean not in the same country. So if you do business in any other state, you're a foreign entity in the state of Florida, or vice versa.
So do you see outside of the US a lot of people opening business within the US?
Yes, there's a lot of foreign nationals and foreign entities who do business in the US. I mean, obviously, international trade is huge. When you have that, you then need to also, in addition to what we just talked about and everything, you need to bring in the immigration component, and you need to have like a attorney who you have to have, in addition to a business law attorney, you need a immigration attorney or an immigrant or an attorney who focuses on international law to help you be able to get into the US to do what it is you want to do as a foreign entity or a foreign person.
Mm, mm. Okay, cool. So one of the reasons is like we mentioned for a business to be opened in the US is we get the access to banking, which is very important. And also here you mentioned that regard, so it could be an option for also owners to enter as an immigrant to the US. So, in the end of this discussion, do you think that finally you can add something to this one and tell as a, let's say, framework or pointers what business owners or entrepreneurs should be doing as 1, 2, 3 points?
Sure. I mean, just go through what we just talked about. I mean, make sure you set up the right business organization and that it's done professionally, all the documents are in place, and that it's established the way it needs to be established. Two, make sure everything you do possible, you have in writing and you have contracts if possible, because that's going to help you avoid a lot of problems. And then three, just make sure that you run everything professionally. You don't intermingle yourself personally with your business, and work with your team of professionals, including your attorney, your accountant, your banker. And, I mean, if you put in the work, you put in the stuff, that's how you make a successful business.
Definitely. So, Matthew, where can people learn more about you and see what you do and get in touch with you?
Sure. So I'm all over social media. I'm in every social app and all stuff. But the easiest way is to go to my website, which is fornarolegal.com. It's my last name, FORNAROLEGAL.com. I've got links to all my social media there. I've got all my videos there. I've got all my podcasts there. And I've got a bunch of information that if you have questions, a lot of it will be just answered by going to my website. And if you need to contact me, it has my email and my phone number on there, so you can contact me.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Matthew, for being with me on this episode of the Success Grid podcast. I'm sure that owners would appreciate this because it is an important thing when we are building a business for the future, whether now or later, because the steps you talked about are important for each business. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Hussein, for having me.